Hey y'all, it's been a few minutes since I've posted on YouTube, so I had some fun new Bible journaling videos to share with you guys. And this one's actually going to be a 4-part video series, and we're going to talk about love. I actually saw this on Valentine's Day, so that's why I wrote it out on a heart. I really love this acronym. But super important reminder, love is not limited to a holiday. It's not seasonal. It should be who we are and what we do, right? Because God is love and we're made in his image. So I love this. Our pastor's wife shared this with a small group, that the L reminds us his love is limitless. The O is for obtainable. V is for victorious, and E is for everlasting. And I've got some verses written out here to the side, and so as I dug into it, I really wanted to journal something for each of these letters. So that's why I'm going to break it up into 4 parts. I'm going to do 4 different types of journaling pages. So today we're going to start with L, and I'm in Ephesians 3, verse 18 through 19. I've got my interleaved Bible out, and I've just got a white crayon and some watercolors. So I'm going to keep it super simple on this one. And this verse goes with our limitless love. So that's our L. And you can even see I wrote it down here at the bottom. So, don't be afraid to write in the margins too. It doesn't all have to be super colorful and fancy. Take your notes, do your doodles, and sometimes that's enough. But I've got this whole blank page over here, and I really wanted to do something else with it to remind me of that idea of how limitless his love is. So let me read our verse, and then we're going to jump into it. I've already underlined it over here. So I'm going to start in verse 17, actually, that says, "So that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you, being rooted and grounded in love." Verse 18, "may have strength to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God." All right. So what a beautiful reminder that his love is bigger than we can even fathom, right? So it talks about to even comprehend the size of his love. It's just not something that we're able to do. And because that's who he is and what he is, that's what he calls us to do and be as well, right? Because we're called to follow in his footsteps. We're created in his image. So I've got my little water spritzer. This is the Pastel Dreams Prima watercolor set. So I'm going to just spritz that down real quick, get it a little wet. And again, I'm doing this in my interleaved Bible. The pages are not prepped. Bible paper in general is actually really strong, so don't be afraid to get them wet. Now the illustrating Bible that has the spiral bound is a little different. That's a different type of paper, but regular Bible paper is very resilient. Obviously, you just don't want to tear it. And we don't want to get too much water down in the spine. That's my only recommendation there. But you'll see that I use a lot of water when I use watercolor. So for now, I'm going to start out just getting those a little wet, get them started. And I'm going to start with my white crayon. So because it's wax, it's going to resist that watercolor when I throw it on. You can buy clear crayons at like Hobby Lobbies and Michael's and things like that. But the white ones out of the Crayola box work great if you don't need it to be clear for some reason. Okay, so this part's probably going to be a little hard to see on the video. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and write my letters. I'm going to write limitless love. Hopefully you can see it a little bit. And I'm going to doodle some hearts, and then we're going to add our watercolor to the page and see what it comes out like. Okay, so I want my word love. I'm going to move this over just a little bit. I want my word love to be the biggest part of the page. But I still want to, like I said, leave some room for hearts. I think the biggest challenge on this, honestly, is just trying to be able to see what you're doing. Because even though this page is not quite white, it's pretty close. It's that kind of off-white parchment color. So you may have to like shift it around in the light a little bit, or you know, just go with it and see. And see if I tilt my page a little, I can see a little bit better where I've been, just so I don't write over this. So you can tell this is not going to be a super, I would say, fancy page. It's not going to be perfect by any means, which is kind of how I roll anyway, right? Okay, so believe it or not, I have the word love there, and I'm going to write limitless above it. And now you could pencil this in and trace it, but if you put the wax over the pencil, you're not going to be able to erase the pencil. So that's just something to keep in mind. Once the wax goes over it, the crayon part, you're not going to be able to get anything under it back up. So again, I am just writing this in printed letters. They're not fancy. They are likely probably not even quite the same size, and I'm okay with that. You could also do this with embossing powder, which would resist the watercolor. They make embossing pens that you can use. But again, I wanted to keep this super simple, and it's kind of fun because you get the surprise factor. So I'm going to do some little hearts around. Like I said, I can tilt my paper. I can see my words are kind of here. I did use a little heart in the place of the O in love. So again, I'm just going to doodle some hearts. You can do whatever you want. You can make some little squiggles or some dots. Whatever you do, like I said, is going to be resisted by the watercolor. So it will stay white, or white-ish, probably. And then we'll see the watercolor take color over top of it. Watercolors are, I know a lot of times people get nervous about using them in their Bibles, but they're actually a really great resource. It's something a lot of people have. Doesn't take a lot of cleanup. And I have not had any issues with bleed through on my pages. I know people ask about that a lot. The only ones I've heard about anybody having bleed through issues with tend to be Crayolas. So I'd say stay away from those. Other than that, you know, use what you have or get what works for your budget and go from there. So I'm going to grab this crimson, which is a really pretty, like, bright pink. I'm going to lay it on here and hopefully, okay, there's some words. I was going to say hopefully I've got some resist there. You notice I've got lots of water on there, so actually I'm going to spritz my page a little bit. So again, it's not going to wipe the wax off, but now when I put that watercolor on, it's going to move. It's going to do what watercolor is kind of intended to do, which is play with water, right? That's what it does. So how pretty is that? And you see how it moves more organically. When you put it on watercolor on dry paper, you get sharper edges. It doesn't move as much. And again, if that's what you're trying for, that's fine. You just want to know what you're going to get. So I'm just kind of randomly splotching this color around. Really liking that pink. And I'm not even a pink person, but it's just really pretty. Okay. And I'm going to grab some other color here. I'm just rinsing that off. I've got this lavender, lilac rain is what they're calling it. Throw some of that in there. And I'm probably just going to stay mostly in the pink and purple range. I might throw a little blue in there. Those colors all play nice together, and so I don't have to worry about getting close to each other. They can blend into each other and kind of bloom out. And again, these are pastel dreams, so they're a little lighter. So I'm putting them on, I would say kind of thick or heavy, but watercolors dry lighter than they start out with wet. So I may come back over it with some more color afterward because I do like my colors pretty saturated. Even if I'm using light colors like this. Okay. Left a little room for some other color. I think I'm going to grab a blue. This Pool Party. It's a fun color. Okay. Just to give it a little extra so it's not all pink and purple. Although the blue will probably make its own purple too, so that's fun. So again, you notice even though I spritzed it, I just made sure that it isn't dripping down into the spine. If it does, it's no big deal. Just grab a paper towel and blot it up. Okay, again, like I said, that's my only, I can saturate the page. That doesn't bother me at all. You just don't want pools going down into the spine because what'll happen, it'll weaken it, the binding. That's looking pretty. All right, I got a little bit more pink. Straighten this out a little bit. Now I've just got a regular piece of copy paper behind this so that I don't color all the pages behind it. I'm not worried about getting it over here on that page. So I'm gonna hit that with a dry real quick. Now you'll see I kind of missed obviously a little section right there with my crayon, which is no big deal, but I can blot some of that watercolor so that I have a clearer V. I can actually come back and add a little more wax if I want to. Okay. Let's do that up here too with the T, just so it looks like a T. I can get that kind of wet and actually pull up a little bit of that water. Trying to grab small pieces. Okay. So because I want that to say limitless, I'm just going to throw a little bit more crayon on there, and then I can add some more color. Make the T look a little more like a T and the L a little more like an L. There we go. All right, again, this is really just about being playful. I think that's super fun. And remember what Bible journaling is all about. It's not about making the prettiest picture by any means. It's really just that creative response to what you've already reflected on in God's Word. So I'm going to give this a quick dry. Now, if I wanted to, I could come back with that crayon and go over the dry paper. And again, if it was clear, it would keep that color. If not, it's going to turn it whitish again. But you can come back and add some more details if you want to that. I'm liking it the way it is, honestly. I love the way the watercolor plays. I said literally with the water. When it blooms and everything like that, that's why I always encourage people not to be afraid to use water. Because if you put it on dry, you can't get the same effect. And you can certainly let this dry on its own. You can also move the page a little bit where it's still wet and let that drip around. Your page might be a little crinkly. Personally, I think that's super fun. It doesn't bother me at all. If it bothers you a lot, there are people that actually iron their pages, so just be careful if you try that. You want to use kind of a low iron and put a piece of copy paper or something along those lines over it. Okay, so I'm just adding a little bit more color in a couple spots. And again, I want to make sure and pick up plenty of water when I do that so that it's not just like a big sharp-edged spot. Like I said, I think I'm liking that pretty much where it's at. Pick up a little more blue. Just soften those edges, bring the blue out a little bit more. And again, we can layer. Now keep in mind when you're using watercolor, it will reactivate some when it gets wet, meaning the colors can still mix and they can move around a little bit. So again, it's not a bad thing. You just want to know what's going to happen. All right. Yeah, my tea got a little lost, but that's all right. I can tell it's a tea, and that's all that matters. And like I said, I can come over it when it's completely dry with that white crayon again and add a little bit more white to it. I'm just going to dry that little section real quick. I'm not too worried about getting all of this dry because we are pretty much done, so it can sit for a few minutes and do its thing. But I want to touch up that tea real quick before we go. So make sure and check the YouTube channel for the next 3 videos on love Bible journaling. Okay, so we still have O, V, and E to cover. Wipe some of that color off the crayon. Yep. There we go. Okay. Now again, if I really wanted that to be super white, I can come back with a paint pen or a gel pen, but it doesn't bother me a bit. It kind of just blends into the background. So I hope this gave you some great ideas. I hope it's a wonderful reminder about how unlimited God's love is. And we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.